Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. An interesting comment from one of the longtime subscribers to the channel, my good buddy, Frog Spinach. He is of the opinion that Matchroom may be scaling back efforts to promote women's boxing. He said, to me it seems like Matchroom may be divesting from women's boxing at the moment. Caught my attention. And Turkey, Saudi money might be a driver of that. I think Cameron, Ali, Bridges, Hughes, Baumgartner, Frank Smith says she's likely moving on. Departures have only been balanced with Stephanie Pinedo addition. It's a stout observation, but I would give it a little bit more attention. You see, when it comes to Chantel Cameron and Alicia Baumgartner and Nina Hughes, for example, those fighters made the decision to leave, not Matchroom. Matchroom did not sever ties with them. So that when they decide to go elsewhere in search of greener pastures, it's not an indicator that Matchroom is scaling back efforts to promote women. They probably would have kept promoting them if they wanted to stay, but they wanted to leave. Now, when it comes to Ramla Ali and Ebony Bridges, it's a little different. They lost. I don't think they've stopped promoting Ramla Ali. But I do know they stopped promoting Ebony Bridges, though we know what happened in Ebony's last fight. She lost her IBF title. At some point after that, they made her an offer to do a fight. She didn't like the offer, so she didn't fight. She sat out for many months, then announced her pregnancy. I remember hearing that she was with child, and we haven't really seen her since. But none of that really boils down to Matchroom scaling back efforts to promote women. And I've seen more than one person say that Matchroom's involvement in those Saudi shows might be the driving force why they're not promoting the women as much as they are, but look at the show that they just announced. George Kambosos' Matchroom debut in Australia features not one, but two women's bouts on what is a Matchroom show. Sky Nicholson's fight with Tiara Brown and Shernika Johnson's fight with Nina Hughes, their rematch. That's two women's title fights on a Matchroom show. Now, you talk about them signing replacements for the fighters that are no longer under the banner, that the only recent woman they signed was Stephanie Pinedo. I'm of the opinion that if Shernika makes it past Nina Hughes for a second time, they might sign her. There were a couple of bad experiences there that might have led Matchroom to refine their methods when signing female talent, because Chantel Cameron couldn't stop complaining. Neither could Natasha Jonas. Savannah Marshall left you. April Hunter left you. They migrated to Boxer. Then Boxer's Shannon Ryan migrated to Matchroom. She just boxed on a Matchroom show. Was that 3 weeks ago? It's not that they're scaling back efforts, I think. It's that they're being a lot more judicious with who they invest in and what they stand to get out of it. They are refining their methods because women's boxing matches are still going on. Maisie Rose had a fight. Shannon Ryan had a fight. They just had a fight. Rhiannon Dixon has a fight coming up. Was announced a few days ago. Sky Nicholson's fight was officially announced earlier today. Do I think they could stand to sign more female fighters? I do. Could they be doing a little more? I think they could, but I think that applies to everyone. I think that applies to Top Rank just as much as it applies to Matchroom, if not more. I think that applies to Golden Boy. I think that applies to Queensbury. I think they could all stand to do a little more. I would like to see Matchroom make more of an effort to sign fighters from this part of the world. A young fighter that goes by the name Yadiria Bustillos. A minimum weight and a fighter of Mexican descent. I think she would be a fantastic signing for Matchroom because she's young, she's got a high ceiling, and a lot of upside. Yadira Bustillos is someone I would like Matchroom to sign. I would like Matchroom to sign Mexico's own Camila Zamorano, otherwise known as La Magnifica, another minimum weight fighter, only 17 years old, unbeaten, and very talented, lots of upside. I think when Eddie Hearn first debuted in America, as a promoter, he didn't really understand the dynamics here, but by now he does. After so many years, I think he fully knows the value of signing Mexican fighters and Mexican talent and how prideful and supportive Mexican fight fans are. Camila would be a great signing for Matchroom. They would have to work with Zenfer because she fights south of the border under the Zenfer Promotions banner. Zenfer is a very well-to-do Mexican-based promotional outfit that promotes a lot of familiar Mexican fighters. So they would have to work something out with them, but I think they could do it. Signing that fighter who's from south of the border, signing a fighter north of the border in Bree Howling. They could do a lot worse than sign Bree. That if Bree Howling makes it past Brittany Sims in her next fight, it might be a good idea for Matchroom to pick her up because she's young, she's capable, easy on the eyes, and has a fan-friendly style. They should sign her. Some of Matchroom's previous signings were with fighters that were already kind of up there in age, like Ebony Bridges and Nina Hughes, Shannon Courtenay to a lesser extent. Whereas these recommendations, these are actually younger fighters than those fighters were at the time that Matchroom signed them, so you have more time to groom them and get something out of them, build them. But to address Frog Spinach's comment, I don't think they're scaling back efforts so much as refining them. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a couple of new signings, new Valkyries at Matchroom this year. I hope to see some new signings. Some of the more established names in the sports careers are winding down. They're approaching the end. So let's usher in the new generation of Valkyries. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, on the heels of the Canelo Alvarez versus Jake Paul fights collapse, most Valuable Promotions released an official statement saying MVP was deep in negotiations for a blockbuster fight between Jake Paul and Canelo Alvarez on Cinco de Mayo weekend in Vegas, a massive event for the Mexican, Puerto Rican, and American fans. And it's disappointing to see how the situation unfolded. MVP operates with integrity, transparency, and respect for the sport, its athletes, and the fans. Unfortunately, not everyone in boxing shares those values. The situation is a reminder not to believe everything you read, especially when the current media environment is often controlled by those with hidden agendas, including promoters who have reporters on their payroll. We remain in active discussions with multiple high-profile opponents and are committed to delivering the biggest fights, the most exciting events, and to working with partners who share our values and our commitment to boxing and its fighters. Jake Paul isn't going anywhere, and neither is MVP. We'll continue to disrupt boxing on our terms. I think the real reason they released this statement is because they feel they got played outwardly. So close to finalizing their deal, how Canelo Alvarez quite abruptly left them high and dry, all dressed up, with nowhere to go. It's almost like he never really intended to fight you, and he was only using you as a leverage play to get a better deal from Turkey. What was initially supposed to be a 3-fight deal that starts in September now is a 4-fight deal that starts in May. Well, how did he play them? Canelo Alvarez was likely offered an obscene amount of money to box this novice boxer on a huge platform in Netflix. So if you're Canelo, you can then go to Turkey and say, listen, I'll work with you, but you've got to compensate me for all the money that I'm leaving on the table, because they're offering me a lot of money to box this Jake Paul character, at which point Turkey obliges you, and you end up with a better deal than the one you were about to sign. Maybe Canelo never was going to give this guy the time of day, because reports indicated he would have fought him at cruiserweight. It's hard to imagine Canelo walking in there at 200 pounds. Maybe all it ever was a leverage play to get a better deal from Turkey. To see how fast he ditched him? Ditched Jake Paul, who's in damage control mode. He's trying to spin it. He said, Canelo Alvarez ducked me. Nobody really believes that, Jake. Jake Paul, and is now an owned slave with no regard for the pride of the Mexican people who support him on U.S. soil. It's not surprising when his whole career he's done nothing for the sport of boxing outside the ring. I'm the new face of boxing. We'll see about that. You cannot have the biggest fight of 2025 without my name being involved. When all of your events tank and you lose money, you will all realize who the king of the sport is. 28 years old, biggest fight in boxing history. Buddy, most people don't think your fight with Mike Tyson was even a real fight. He's practically a senior citizen. My own boss, not owned, 5 years in. All you felines want to see me fail, but God has other plans. It's the era of good, the era of the elephant. It's the era of MVP. I think he's angry and I think he feels played. An official statement from MVP and another lengthy statement from Jake Paul himself. What are you mad about? If you're really to face a boxing the way you say you are, then who needs Canelo Alvarez? Just replace him with somebody else. And I think for Jake, that's hard to do. In truth, Jake's a smart kid. I'll never take that away from him. And his event, because that's how I think of it, I don't think of it as a fight so much as an event. The Mike Tyson event was wildly successful, but you're gonna be hard-pressed to top that. You're gonna be hard-pressed to do another event like that. It's not gonna be easy because very few people in combat sports can draw an audience like Mike Tyson can draw an audience. So that after you share the ring with him and call yourself the face of boxing, it's like you're not acknowledging that he brought a lot of that to the table. This is Mike Tyson we're talking about here. You did not do with Tyrone Woodley 2 times what you did with Mike Tyson. You did not do with Anderson Silva what you did with Mike Tyson. What do you think? Jake is a smart kid, and I reiterate, I'll never take that away from him, but it's a gross misconception to think he by himself has the Midas touch and everything he touched turned into gold. No, not everything. You've been on Triller and you've been on Showtime, and from Showtime, you went to DAZN. Now you're on Netflix. From the time that he laced up a pair of professional boxing gloves till now, not everything he did was wildly successful. Not everything. Michael Perry, Ryan Berland, Andre August. I mean, those were just not big fights. Obviously, the Mike Tyson fight was huge. So huge, it's hard to top. And your only hope to top it was a Canelo Alvarez fight. That if you can get him on board, it'll be huge. If you can get him on board. But if you can't, then you're gonna have a problem. It's almost like you outdid yourself with the Mike Tyson event, and the only way to go now is down. I feel like he may have to look in other areas and other arenas for high-profile opponents to do his shows. I don't know, maybe some WWE superstars, maybe some celebrities, I don't know, but it is going to be difficult to find a stand-in for Canelo that brings the value to the table that Canelo brought to the table. During the would-be negotiations, Jake Paul asserted very briefly that he's still the A-side, from A-side to Cast-A-Side. Castaway, all dressed up with nowhere to go. We know Canelo's gonna get a lot of money in his next fight. He is. Now it'll be interesting to see what Jake Paul does. How does he respond? Who does he fight? Would have been the event between Canelo Alvarez and Jake Paul would have drew a massive crowd. Make no mistake. Even people that didn't like the fight were likely going to watch it. But don't get it in your head that the boxing community at large is all broken up, that you're not fighting. Nobody thinks Canelo's ducking you, buddy. Nobody in the boxing sphere, nobody who knows anything about boxing thinks Canelo is afraid of you. I don't even think Jake thinks that. I think Jake is smart enough to use this as an angle to continue to market himself and his fights. He's a smart kid. But I do think he feels taken advantage of. I think he realized that he got played, that the only reason Canelo gave you the time of day was as a leverage play to get a bigger bag from Turkey. So you don't think Canelo was ever serious? In the beginning I did, but Canelo Alvarez leaving him high and dry so abruptly, so quickly, just ditching him. Like a jizz sock. Like so many wet wipes after a night of passion. He just casted Jake to the side like he wasn't nothing. The way it happened, it just gave me the impression that, I don't know, maybe he never was serious about fighting him. He was only using him, and it worked. Now to react to the fallout of Canelo versus Jake Paul's collapse, veteran promoter Lou Dembella said, no question, that Canelo versus Jake Paul not happening is good for what very little is left of the integrity of boxing. The sham of that travesty being debated by casuals and written about by know-nothing, editor-assigned, rent-to-boxing writers would have been unbearable. For that, I thank Turkey LL Sheikh. Lou Debella's not broken up about it, but to his comment, his former fighter, Amendia Serrano, responded. She said, when I saw news of Jake and Canelo fighting, I was not surprised. Jake makes the impossible happen. He changed my life, made women's boxing a priority, gave me and Katie our biggest paydays. I'm with Jake Paul, and he's with all of us. Don't lose sight of that. Jake's not all bad. Being honest, I don't even think Jake is a bad guy or the bad guy. Even if this thing with Canelo didn't work out, and there are those out there who are relishing in this failure, Jake's a smart kid, and he'll figure something out. Moreover, he's providing a lot of opportunities for a lot of fighters that were not otherwise there. So don't lose sight of that Jake's not really the bad guy. But I do think Canelo played him like a fiddle. I do. The fallout of what is now Canelo's amended deal with Turkey El Sheikh. I want to say amended because it was supposed to be a 3-fight deal that starts in September. Now it's a 4-fight deal that starts in May. The official broadcast partner of Riyadh season is DAZN. So what this heralds is Canelo Alvarez's return to the platform in a manner of speaking and ahead of schedule, because this wasn't supposed to happen until later on in the year. But that also means that he's not with the PBC and that he won't be boxing for them. It was initially thought that he would do at least one more fight with the PBC before he enters into the Turkey deal. Now that's not the case, and they don't have his fights to sell, his fight to rely on. Turkey said don't mess with the lion, and I wondered who that was aimed towards. 4 fights for Canelo Alvarez at Riyadh season. The deal is done. A lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep.
Fear the lion, not the jungle.
A shot at Al Heyman, perhaps, that he has managed to poach Canelo Alvarez seemingly ahead of schedule? Ow! Maybe. Now, before all of this came to a head, and before these latest developments broke, I saw veteran boxing scribe Keith Idek say, for all of the con artists and weirdos and people who want the PBC out of the boxing business, by April, stay tuned, for the love of God, or whatever gets you through the day. Now, what was supposed to be happening around April? Canelo versus Jake Paul in early May. In association with the PBC, that's how the story was being reported. But now that we know that all of that is off, I can only imagine that whatever Keith Idek was talking about is now off. And I already figured before any of this happened that Canelo Alvarez would not be proceeding with the PBC moving forward, not beyond this year. They won't have his fights to sell. That relationship has outlived its usefulness, and he doesn't need them anymore. The last 2 fights, they didn't even provide him with the opponents. They are saying that Jermall Charlo, Junkie Charlo, Drug Addict Charlo, is in the running for Canelo Alvarez's May fight, and we'll see about that. I don't think anybody has a hankering for that fight. Maybe it'll be him, maybe it'll be somebody else. I do find it a little hard to believe that it's going to be Jermall, who hasn't boxed in over a year. He sat out all of the last one. 2 weeks ago, he pulled out of the Cornflake Lamana fight due to mental health issues. I don't think he's in the physical state to be boxing anyone, much less a Canelo Alvarez, so I'm not attached to that idea. As stated, Canelo Alvarez's relationship with the PBC has outlived its usefulness, and he has no use of them anymore. What they're going to do moving forward is their own problem, their own business. He's going to be booked up for the next 4 fights at Riyadh season. I saw a Twitter user that goes by the name G-Funky say that unless one of those 4 fights is David Benavidez, he's not interested. Even if one of them is a rematch with Dimitri Bivol? I think a lot must come to pass before Canelo runs it back with Dimitri. There's a lot of moving parts there, but fighting Dimitri is not second prize to a David Benavidez fight. Especially if Dimitri beats Artur in a rematch. Boxing fans are always going to find something to complain about.